Hi, Johnny Flynn fans. I just thought I'd give you a quick talk about why I posted this video, which is mostly audio, by the way. Um, I, I heard Johnny give an interview on BBC Sounds last year, and when he talked about that he was going to go into therapy, I thought, or talking about therapy, I thought, oh God, you know, another star that says they need to go into therapy and that sort of thing. But after listening to what he had to say, my heart went out to him, because he talked about his education, where he was given a scholarship. And to be honest, when you know, as a Johnny Flynn fan, I read up into some of his history of, you know, and on first glance, when you look at it, you think, what a brilliant education he's had, you know, because he managed to get a scholarship, went to a really good boarding school, and then on to drama school with, you know, famous names have been in the past, you know, as long as your arm, you know. And so on first glance, you think, you know, that's absolutely brilliant. What a brilliant life, you know. And he's gone on then to do stage and screen. And also, from my point of view, anyway, this is what I like about him, is the music side of things. You know, he's got it all. And you think, what a perfect life, you know. But having listened to this interview, you can see that it's not really like that, is it? Because as a parent, you'd think to yourself, that's what you'd want for your kids, you know. You'd want that sort of education. It'd be absolutely brilliant. But as a kid, as an 8-year-old, which is what he was at the time, imagine sort of being sent away from your home to go to this boarding school. You leave your friends, you leave your family. You left his sister, who he was really close with, and looking at it from that point of view, I thought, wow, you know, and like I say, my heart went out to him. So enough about me whittering on about it. Here's Johnny's interview with BBC Sounds last year, I think, and see what you think anyway. And anyway, all the best to you all Johnny Flynn fans.
In the last year alone, as an actor, Johnny Flynn gave us a nuanced performance as Mr. Knightley in the big screen adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma. He was only objectified on screen for a minute or so.
Yeah, right, Nicky Bailey.
He also brought something beautifully simpatico to his starring role as a young David Bowie in the movie Stardust, and he played Rory Lomax in the Netflix film The Dig. Also, as a musician, during lockdown, with 3 children at home, he recorded a new album with his friend, the writer Robert McFarlane, and here's a taste of the first single, Gods and Monsters.
I thought I'd have to do battle with gods and monsters. I thought I had to seek profit on distant horizons. Questions I never have answers for, questions that never have answers. See the lights on the other side, I'm burning up. Oh, and the river flows fast and wide as I cross over.
Quite a year, Johnny Flynn. Was it a challenge to write and record the album Lost in the Cedarwood at home? Was it already planned, or did you get the inspiration during lockdown?
No, it was Robert McFarlane, who's a dear friend, called me, you know, in those first few kind of very confusing weeks in March, when things were kind of, you know, schools were shutting down and we were heading into it all. And, you know, for me, my live stuff was going away. I had festivals booked and films and, you know, some theatre and things. And it was all just, it was like Moses in the Red Sea. It was just, you know, this pathway opening, and, you know, but obviously not knowing what was to come and how long we'd be in this for. And he said, should we write a song together? And we'd been playing with the idea of doing something, telling a big story and that first conversation we had, I can remember everything about it, and we were looking for an ancient story to sort of retell or re-examine, but make it relevant to what was happening to us now. And he casually said, how about Gilgamesh? And I was thinking, hold on, one song, please. Let's just, we'll be out of this next week. And almost exactly a year later, we'd finished the album, and it was tough. But we rolled with everything that we were given. We had to. We could rarely get together. We did it mostly by corresponding on WhatsApp or whatever, and then found little bits of time to record. And I would, get up before the kids and hammer away at the piano. And all the demos have the sound of kids screaming for.
Isn't your 10-year-old actually on the album?
Yeah, Gabriel. Yeah, and I know he's listening in the kitchen right
Hello,
now.
Gabriel. We're impressed. Do you get PRS or anything? What would he get? Would he get like a residual?
Yeah, he should.
Yes.
Patron saint of broadcasters.
Who?
Gabriel.
Really?
Yeah.
Double the amount you should get, Gabriel. What is it about storytelling through folk music that just doesn't happen in any other form of music, in my humble opinion?
I suppose, I don't know. There's always, it's lovely that folk music never really goes away. I mean, the idea of sort of storytelling comes and goes, and how relevant stories from the past are. That fashion kind of comes and goes, and there's that sort of need for burning political relevance of stories that are happening now. And my early acting career was at the Royal Court, and I was so interested in being an actor in plays that had important, relevant stories to tell. But actually, that is still the case. But I love telling old stories because in lots of ways they can be a roadmap to now. And with music as well, there's something other. There's some kind of mysterious emotional element that you can't capture in any other way.
Is it also, Johnny, something to do with landscape, do you think? So much of English music, English pastoral, is a response to landscape. Robert Macfarlane's writing is a response to landscape. Is that something that's resonant for you too? Totally,
yeah. I mean, and it's become more and more relevant. I feel, I don't know how to express it, but there's a sense of gratitude and debt to the landscapes that I find myself in, that increases as I get older. And I think we've been living in some ignorance of our landscape for many years in this sort of epoch of humanity. And people like Robert are reminding us of the importance of allowing landscape into ourselves.
Your mother gave you a songbook, didn't she? Tell us a little bit about your family, in fact, because they're also musicians and actors, aren't they?
Yeah, so my dad was an actor, and he wrote songs and sang in, he was at the RSC in the early 60s and at the Old Vic, and did, but he was in, for instance, he was in Vanessa Redgrave's As You Like It. She was sort of discovered, but he played Amiens and wrote the songs. He's the singer in As You Like It. So it was weird. I sort of didn't know him at that time, and he died when I was 18, so he hasn't seen any of the things that I've been doing in my professional life. But I've ended up basically having quite a similar career without unintentionally. So, and then my mother, my mum is she's an amazing musician, has such a great sense of music, and I think I really have her to thank for that early interest in the music that I love now. She had this folk songbook, as you mentioned. She played in folk bands in the 70s, and when I was about 10 or 11, started to teach myself the guitar. She handed me this Bible, this book of songs. It was like the great grandmother's kind of recipe book, had everything handwritten and little cartoons that she'd drawn. She's an amazing artist as well, and it was very varied stuff, but some traditional things, Bob Dylan songs, there'd be random Neil Diamond song chucked in, and that's how I learned to play the guitar, and so that those songs and that storytelling in those songs spoke to me.
And you lost the book, is that right?
Oh.
He's putting his hands
I'm not
to
sure
his
she
face.
knows that it's.
Oh, no!
Well, it's gone, miss. It's in a trunk somewhere. I just can't find
It's
it.
carefully archived, I think.
That's what's happened.
Gabriel can find
So
it.
you were obviously incredibly musical as a child, and then got not one but 2 music scholarships to very good schools, didn't you? What was that like to be away from home and yet be developing all these wonderful creative streaks?
It was, it's funny. I've started really, as you should, examining these things, going into it through therapy and things like that, because I was off from the age of 8 at this boarding school. I was at a cathedral choir school, and I'd been in the local village primary school where we lived, and my violin teacher who taught the kids at the school said, put him up for this scholarship. It'll be an amazing musical education, all that. And of course, to my parents, that seemed like a great opportunity, and it was just down the road. But being a choral scholar and singing the choir meant that I was at the school all the time and came home for maybe a couple of hours on a Sunday, basically, and was doing all the services and then I stayed boarding, and then I went to another school, Bedales, and had a scholarship there, and so I was away from home from 8 to 18, and while it gave me so much in terms of a musical discipline and understanding, it also is inseparable from a kind of a pain of being away from home, away from my sister who went to local schools. So it's weird. My son's 10, my daughters are 5 and about to turn 3, and it's really burning in relevance now. What do I want for them? And the answer is they're not leaving my arms, kind of thing. Anyway, yeah. So it's a funny thing.
And when you talk about therapy, did you choose to go to therapy because you felt that you had something to address, because you knew that it would be helpful? What took you there?
Yeah. It's funny. I've done all sorts of, not just kind of conventional therapy, but there's a wonderful thing called family constellation therapy.
Oh, the Hoffman process.
It's a bit like that,
Yeah.
very similar, where there's archetypes and you're enacting, or you have people kind of playing roles, and I think that anyway, that kind of therapy is really helpful. Group, being an actor, it's really it's lovely to be given a role, and yeah, I with straight sort of talking therapy, I don't trust myself not to start kind of telling stories. Bystander,
yeah,
in a process like that, and just it's like layers of an onion. I think the stuff with school and hitting my 30s and realizing that there was these niggles or people I hadn't forgiven, or that was where I realized, I'm not, there's some things I need to unlock or work out, and especially as my kids hit that age that I was when I went off to school, that was when it really became interesting to think about it. From
getting a nomination for an Olivier Award as Lee in Jerusalem with Mark Rylance to, you just went from one success to the other as a theatre actor, but you also got a record deal. So did you ever at that time think that you might have to make a choice between the two? It's interesting. People have always asked me to try and say which one I would rather be doing, or if I had to, gun to my head kind of thing. And early on, I thought, are they right? Do I really need to choose? And I tried desperately to not tell people in the acting world that I was a musician and vice versa, because I was so keen to be taken very seriously in both. And I knew I wanted to be a student of both, especially with acting, and I was very serious about that and wanted to work at the court, and so I was very lucky that somehow I managed to keep those two things quite separate. I'm always pleased when somebody says to me, "Oh, I didn't know you were a musician," or "I didn't know you're an actor," because it means that's worked. Well, we were trying to...
I can say that now, actually. I had no idea that Johnny Flynn and the Sussex Wit, which is the folk band, I'd had no idea that Johnny Flynn was also an actor.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's still working.
Mission accomplished. And yet we were all discussing before the programme whether we could think of anybody else who has so successfully had two parallel careers.
Frank Sinatra.
Not really.
Ollie Alexander, he's an interesting...
Well, yes, he's the one we came
thought
up with. Yeah. And, of course, he's one starring role in so far.
And I was thinking at that wonderful bridge production of Julius Caesar, there was a kind of scratch band made out of the actors in that, because you realise that lots of people have strings to their bows, don't they?
Yeah. That was my earliest theatre stuff. I was with a company called Propeller, Ed Hall's company at the Old Vic and on tour around the world, and that's all. They're actors, but they all play instruments. So that's where I learned that there are worlds where the two can combine very well.
So, is there a fan crossover? Are there fans who know both your work? Obviously, you don't want there to be.
Yeah, I don't mind.
You're barred.
I love honouring the people that I think have been coming to shows and been listening to the music from the beginning. Yeah, I don't mind where that comes from. I just I think I used to get people getting really angry with me if I took a role in a film, because it was like, well, you're not going to do that album now.
Oh, right.
But so, I also like that pressure to, I'm reminded that through my own writing, there's some part of me that needs to be examined or exercised. And then, but I love acting. I really love being in companies, and I've missed that this year.
And how do you cope with critics? How do you deal with the people who do get angry about certain things?
I mean, I think it's I think there's quite a toxic culture in this country in particular. Having worked a bit in America and been on tour as a musician a lot there, and worked there in films and things. I think the culture here is that people judge things for what they're not rather than for what they are. And in America, there's maybe it's something to do with the size and the island mentality here. You can see everything against everything else here, whereas if you're in Texas, you don't have to be a country band. You're just a band, So here I'm always being compared to things, and I don't mind. I've put that in, factored that in, and I don't mind it. I just think it's the internet means that people find you in the way that you want to be found anyway.
And you can in some ways curate that if you've got social media powers, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean there's dangers to that as well. But
of course, we played the theme song for the TV series Detectorists at the beginning of the show. I believe that track's had such an impact on people that people want you to play it at their weddings. Is that right?
Yeah.
What do you say?
Well, it's really touching that weddings and funerals.
Funerals as well.
Yeah. Well, Well, I suppose that there's this aspect, because the song was written from the perspective of the treasure buried under the ground. So I suppose I get the funeral thing, and I understand the wedding thing as well, because it's this long lost love. It's just funny that I worked with Mackenzie Crook, who wrote and directed Detectorists, and in Jerusalem, and he was writing this series as all your friends who are actors are writing TV series, and he said, I'm listening to your music, you do something for the thing. I was like, yeah, I'll want to see it, kind of thing. And then suddenly we would. Was working with a lovely friend, Dan Michelson, on all the incidental music, and the BBC couldn't afford. They didn't. They liked to license original tracks. So originally it was going to be an old track of mine, and they said, "Can you just write a new one?" and wrote that song. And I'm so touched that it's become what it is.
Johnny, thank you so much. You're staying with us for the rest of the show, but Lost in the Cedarwood by Johnny Flynn and Robert Macfarlane is digitally available now, and you can pre-order a physical copy to be shipped in September.